I'd like to call this meeting of the Oconee County Planning Commission together. It is 6 o'clock Monday, June 5th. Our first order of business is invocation. Mr. Nix, would you please?
Pray with me, if you will, please. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray. Amen.
Mickey.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Just to let you know, Britt will not be at the meeting. He is sick. Okay. Y'all have before you the minutes of our last meeting, May the 15th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes.
We don't have any public comment, excuse me, on non-agenda items. Do we have any commissioner member comments this time? If none, staff comments?
Okay, we got a couple of things for you guys this evening. Start with some subdivisions. We've got 3 since you guys last met. The first one in your packet, and this does look better in the PDF, is Oak Street. This is 156 units. There you go. And I'll let you digest that a little bit, and then we'll pull up the zoning map so you can see a little closer where that is. So it's these 2 parcels. And this parcel. This did come before the Board of Zoning Appeals. They were originally planning on doing a mix of townhomes and single-family residential. They have eliminated the townhomes out of there, and it's all 100% single-family residential now. Happy to answer any questions you guys have about this one. We'll go back.
They never did acquire the property in between that, right?
Yeah, so they have this section down here, and then there's another property line up at the top. So they have this piece, and these pieces right here.
It's still got that home right in the front.
Yep.
So it's all gonna be that, why, did they give a reason why they not gonna do the, apartments or what it was?
They did not, and we don't require one, so
Okay.
they can make their.
Just curious, as if they,
They
Have reasoning why they
changed their
decided not
original
to.
design, so they're no longer planning on doing the townhomes as part of this project.
how big are the lots?
The average lot size is gonna be right here, and this is, we'll pull this up for you a little bit. Just under about a fifth of an acre.
How close is this to the Seneca city?
City limits?
Yeah, city limit. And do we think they might annex it?
So the gray is gonna be the city limits. You know, the agreement for water says that if you're contiguous with municipal boundaries, that you will annex in. Seneca Light and Water will almost certainly be the water provider. That's something they could request, but at this time, it is still outside of those municipal boundaries.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's contiguous either.
And they got one property there, if they,
Yes. so the closest point of the city is on the other side of Oak Street.
Now, the street, if right across from them, there where the dollar store and all is at, if that was in the city, they would call that,
Potentially, they could. It depends on how they interpret it,
with the street being there, they could still say, well, okay, you touch city property.
potentially.
This is another reason for a development standards ordinance.
The second one is a multifamily. This is behind Applewood House, our center. So this parcel right here, so here's 123 Sheep Farm Road and Wells Highway. Behind the shopping center right here, the 16-acre parcel. They are planning for 238 units in this building configuration.
So that's gonna be apartment or townhouses, right?
Yeah, apartments.
Hard to believe that's not the city limits. It's right there.
So here again is that zoning map, the gray.
Wow.
I mean, they just screwed it right around it too.
Surrounded.
Do you know if any of that's designed for workforce housing or anything like that?
I couldn't tell you what their market target is, but it is multifamily, so it is hopefully gonna be a more affordable product. But market dictates price, so. And happy to answer any questions about this one before we move on to the third one tonight. Final one, this is Wells Crossing. This has come through a couple of iterations previously. This is 107 units. And let's see if we can get that. Okay. And just the reference. So it's all of these pieces off of Wells Highway. And then they will exit through this Pelham Creek Drive.
Is it Pelham Creek and Wells Highway?
Yeah, so they'll have one
Access.
exit out of Pelham's Creek and then one that's actually on Wells.
On Wells.
Yep.
And do we have an idea of the size of acreage on this one?
The site or the individual lots,
Individual lots?
these are gonna be closer to quarter acre.
What is this up in the right corner?
Here?
Yeah.
This up here?
That's existing.
These are all existing homes.
So fairly similar size to the existing, slightly smaller lots.
Just a little bit. There'll be some that are bigger too, so some of these corner lots on the cul-de-sacs obviously will be a little closer in size. And around some of these current turns.
I will say, based on what I've seen here, if we were to try to structure zoning, if we had a blank slate and we're trying to create zoning, these would have fallen exactly where we would have wanted them to fall from a location standpoint, based on creating the zoning. I mean, one of them is in a commercial district next to Lowe's and behind Hobby Lobby and Belk's, which is already a high-density desired area if we were creating zoning.
When you say creating zoning,
If we were to create zoning, zoning would be designed to say, okay, we want to push density over here, or we want to push density over there, or we want to have broad spans over here, or we want to have broad spans over there. That's the reason zoning is implemented to begin with. And so this is the density, the highest density is in the areas that we would have said, this is where we would want the highest density. Things that access four-lane roads, things that are accessed by traffic lights, things like that for the highest density. And so this is where those are located. With the exception of this one, and this one's on Wells Highway, which is,
I'm not sure I follow you, Mike. Are you saying that without regulatory requirements in place, things are falling to where they should? Or are you saying that we need to force stuff?
no, I'm saying the first.
Okay.
That without the regulatory requirement, if we were to create more regulatory requirement, we would have, in my opinion, been trying to force
already
density into
happening.
commercial areas where these are actually going natural.
Right, I agree with that.
I mean, they're following the sewer.
Yeah, so sewer's there, so that kind of made sense, yeah.
This type could also happen out in
In a rural area.
It could.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
not as apt to do it because there's no sewer out there.
Right.
So,
So yes, standards I completely agree with. But fortunately, organically, these particular examples have fallen where we would be wanting to push that density.
Anything else on these, and then I will let you guys get back to your meeting.
nope. All right, let's go into item number 8, Comprehensive Plan Goals 2023, Chapter 4. Ms. Teresa.
All right, chapter 4 deals with, it's titled the economic element. So it looks at the labor force characteristics, income and wealth characteristics, commuting patterns, educational attainment, workforce development, diversity of the economic base, future and existing employers. So just marching right down the line, 4112. Maintain communication with existing business and industry to assess the local business climate, public services, workforce quality, and potential areas for improvement. We have a very lively and engaged Chamber of Commerce, so I would say they're on that, and I would check that off as being checked off. 4113, continue to develop the I-85 industrial corridor with associated infrastructure to support fully utilized industrial parks, Sewer South, and everything that follows that, checks that off. 4115, recruit new industry to the county and assist in expansion of existing employers in the target sectors of advanced manufacturing, biosciences, automotive, and energy. Anything that's recruiting industry to the county, I would leave up to the OEA and Jamie Gilbert. 4116, continue to support the Oconee Economic Alliance as the primary entity to represent the county and pursue industrial development with broad-based public and private funds. What was there? In February 2023, there was a joint agreement with South Carolina Department of Commerce to grade the Golden Corner Commerce Park. That's an example of that. 4121, strengthen relationships and partnerships among the county, civic organizations, municipalities, educational institutions, service agencies, and private sector to support economic development. Again, I would look to the chamber for that. Okay, anybody can speak up too. 4123, conduct annual visits and tours of county industrial facilities to establish and maintain rapport and work in relationships with existing businesses. I've been to 3. I went to the landfill, I went to Conross, and met with, took a sewer tour, and then out to Bad Creek Pump Station. Did anybody else go out anywhere in the field, see anything?
I've been to the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority and sewer plant, Conross.
Yeah, I also attended that.
Okay. 4211, align workforce development and training programs with economic development efforts to include targeted industries, current and projected workforce needs, and provide robust apprentice and internship opportunities. We have the Vocational Rehab Center, that just expanded by like 8,000 feet, 18,000 feet, something like that. I had an article about it here somewhere. 4212, work to improve the completion rate, including alternative credit sources. Can't help you there. I assume the schools are all over that one. I don't know. 4221, increase the number of jobs with higher than average county wages and demand outlook. That's ongoing, and I have nothing to say on that one. Support and promote the continued expansion of the consolidated Oconee County Workforce Development Center campus at the Oconee Industrial and Technology Park to include Tri-County Technical College and, got cut off.
Suspenseful, yeah, I don't know.
I don't have anything particular in that one. Anybody got anything on that one? Okay, 4312, promote policies that preserve and promote the unique nature of downtowns, key buildings, streets, and public spaces. You could say Newry Mill, that does that. That's a unique space that we want to promote, our history. And then the Harper's Five and Dime Rehab is turning into Harper's Plaza. That's a good example of that. 4313, identify and inventory commercial and industrial infill and gray field sites throughout the county and prioritize for reuse and redevelopment. I don't have much on that one. Love to see Utica, but it's not happening yet. Establish a countywide loan pool in partnership with area banks. Focus on downtown revitalization. Don't know about that one. 4321, support small business startup and expansion and assist in clearing key steps in the development and startup process to include permitting and inspections, licensing, and eligibility for state and local ... It's cut off again. Again, I would look to the chamber for that. 4322, establish and maintain local business incubation capabilities. I've got nothing. 4323, support efforts to expand the reach and economic impact of Think Oconee. Buy local campaign throughout the county. They have a really active website that points you to a bunch of different stuff where you can support them.
They're very active too.
Yeah, you can check that one off. 4331, continue implementation of the Destination Oconee Plan objectives. Every week there's an article. Here's a waterfall of the week. They're really pushing tourism and hiking and all that. And then support economic development activity that leverages the assets and strengths of the county's rural areas to include agribusiness and agritourism, outdoor recreation, heritage tourism, and ecotourism.
There's a
Happening with our
lot of
parks.
activity going in that area, of course.
Yeah,
And
our parks.
it's so much that I can't really get my head around it from one week to the next. But it would really be nice if we had someone to bring us kind of an image of the networking that's taking place between the different entities.
Okay, so that's it for 4. We've done a really good job with 4. It's almost full, almost complete.
All right, I need a motion to,
Say that we reviewed, I move to say we reviewed chapter 4.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Who's second?
Thanks again to Mrs. Spicer.
All right, so let's move right on to number 9, discussion regarding commercial junkyard ordinance. Council, or not council, but the law enforcement committee seen fit to send this back, excuse me, for the sole purpose to have Mr. Haney and Mr. Adams to look over it because they didn't have a chance to be a part of it. So, since Mr. Brett is not with us, Mr. Haney, do you have anything?
I have a point of information. What brought about this ordinance? Is there past safety concerns or accidents that happen? It's heavy laden with safety in here. So is that what's driving it, or is that just?
Approximately 3.5 years ago, we started this. It was all about safety. Had some concerns with some of the ones we have here in the county that children can just walk in them. There was no fences, cars stacked up 10 high, and kids, by their nature being kids, they see something stacked up, they want to climb on it. And if they can just walk into these establishments, there's always that possibility of them getting hurt, killed, or maimed, or whatever. I don't know that we've had a lot of problems. I don't think we've had any accidents that I can recall. We've had a lot of complaints about certain places. So we started talking about the ordinance, like I said, about 3.25 years ago. The last year and a half, we really got down to it. This commission got down to it and came up with this, with the same idea. We wanted to make sure that it's safe. If they put one in an area and it's close to a subdivision or close to a residential, that it's safe for the kids that's gonna be in that area where they just can't get in there, because kids will be kids. And that was the whole purpose of the ordinance.
So for clarification, this is for a potential hazard, not actual incident.
Not that I know of. We've not had any that I know of. I don't know, Mike.
And I don't think we've had anybody come forward and say there was an accident in. But with the thought of the growth of the county continuing to grow and expand, there's also the potential of additional junkyards
Right.
wanting to grow and expand.
So
So is
here's what I would summarize it as, looks like to me, how it came back. So, right now, if we implemented this ordinance, it would not affect existing junkyards at all unless they meet the criteria for falling into a non-conforming junkyard, that's on page 4 or 5 of your package.
Yes, and I do have a concern about the verbiage in that. Is this just open discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're open for discussion.
So, I see here that we list why a junkyard is an asset to the community. And then, of course, we jump down to the opposed potential hazards. And I do understand that they need to fence in that area because they're acting as a commercial entity. But I'm curious of why we did not throw it in the same block as in other industries for setbacks and all. And hopefully y'all can educate me on this. I really can't see where item E is being improved with this ordinance.
I'm not following you. Item E?
Yes, up top. In findings,
What page are you on?
the very first page.
Oh, got it.
And I think that needs to be struck.
Is that the one about mosquitoes and
Right.
snakes, rats, et cetera?
Because there's nothing in this ordinance that's really targeting that.
That was a leftover from, what we did, Mickey, was we took Pickens County's ordinance, and we modified it
Right.
through several iterations. That echo is from the Pickens County ordinance.
I understand that, but it's, if we're not addressing it, why have it in there?
I think the only thing, the purpose of the findings was just to say, here's what our concerns are and here's what the benefits are. That's all that is. I don't think it's necessarily stuff that we acted on, but it was just describing the goods
The
and the bads
conditions
of
and
the
bads,
junkyard.
okay.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, pros and cons. And obviously, that is a con. Whether we're invested or not, that's a different story.
So fencing, junkyards really do not bring in a huge amount of income, especially when the price of scrap goes way down. And we got here that they're to have treated lumber, stockade mason, chain link, or other improved materials. And I agree with the fencing, it needs to be fenced in. But I think we should also allow them to have woven wire. Because you're just wanting to create a barrier. And it's easier, just as easy to climb woven wire or chain link as it is
What's the
woven
difference
wire.
between woven wire and chain link?
Cost.
No, but what's the difference as far as effectiveness? Is there any?
I don't see where there's any use, either one you can climb over.
So I make a motion that we add woven wire to the definition of fence.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion. and a
Is that
second.
We'll
enough to-
discuss it.
Is that enough to get what you're requiring, in the minds of the people that will be reading this? Because I haven't ever heard of woven wire. So of course I've heard of chain link, but
Yeah.
do we need to further, I guess the question is, do we need to further define what woven wire is? Or even, how high it should be?
Well, the height is already stated, it's
Yeah.
6 foot.
Yeah.
So
Actually, is the woven wire a finer mesh than,
you can get it in different meshes.
Then chain
you got
link?
Cattle fence, goat woven wire, you can get in different things.
it really is harder to go through than for a kid or somebody
Right,
than a chain link is to climb.
Right.
You can't climb it.
Yeah, it,
I'm just thinking
Sounds like a
about,
good suggestion. I just was asking the question of whether or not this is enough information for people to know what it is that we'd like to
Well,
have.
I mean, ask Jim. Jim's gonna be the guy that's regulating it.
I think the people in this county would know what woven wire is.
You can go to Lowe's and ask for woven wire, they're gonna send you to the right spot.
Are there, I'm just trying to get educated on it. Is there, say, 3 different types generally sold of woven wire? One for goats, one for,
Chicken.
cattle, one for,
There is different diameters of holes. There's a 2x4 or 2x6 rather, there's a 4x4, there's a 6x6, and there's a combination of both.
so if you Google woven wire, as you can see, there's a huge price difference versus chain link.
It's on a certain page.
A lot of people will use it for cattle fence here.
Page 205, definition of fence.
it seems like a good suggestion. I just want to make sure if we put it in there, can we say, 2x6 woven wire or something that further defines what it is we're asking for? That's just the question. I don't know.
I think the
Just
height-
generally put it in, let people pick it out.
I think the height is the big thing.
It's gotta be 6 foot.
It's gotta be 6 foot,
Okay.
and
Well, enough said on that. I got the answer to my question. Thank
I'm
you,
just
sir.
thinking I don't know about the holes. I mean, because like I said, most of them are,
The largest is 6 by 6.
yeah, for the most part. And even that, it's hard as heck to climb.
Yeah.
Uh,
The problem we're gonna run into, woven wire is 48 inches tall, so that means they have to go with strands of something on top.
It's still cheaper than chain link,
Still cheaper than,
because I'm doing the same thing for my goats. I'm having to put one and then go up higher because the goats love to jump.
We did it as a property boundary, we used woven wire.
Okay, so we've got a motion, second. All those in favor? Opposed? So we'll add that to that, section there with the type of wire, type of enclosure.
Can I ask you a question while we're discussing this? It does not list like in good condition or to be maintained in an appropriate condition. My only concern with woven wire is it's gonna rust tremendously faster, so it will degrade faster than a traditional like chain link fence. And just the consideration to add that it is
Should be
maintained in
maintained.
good condition or however.
Can you say rust-free? Should we say
But
that?
isn't
No, it doesn't
the,
need to be rust free, but
Isn't the first part of the definition where it says shall
Substantial?
mean a substantial continuous barrier? You get to make that call, right?
Could we possibly add constructed and maintained? Constructed and maintained.
Yeah.
That, I would move that we
Yeah, that would
take
be-
that suggestion and implement it there.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Be good?
Thanks, James.
Anything else, Mr. Haney?
Yeah, so I was curious why we did not adhere to the setbacks that the industrial district has. And I'm just asking questions because I was not
Are
here.
those more restrictive, Mickey?
No, they're actually less restrictive.
Industrial ones are?
Yes, and the reason I brought that up is, so we moved from the old ordinance. If I can find it here. Yeah, which page is that?
The restrictions are page 3 as far as the
150
setbacks.
feet.
Here's the old ordinance. There's an old ordinance in here somewhere. Da-da-da-da. So it was 10 feet from the property line, 20 feet from the right-of-way, 50 feet from the waterway. And
So that was Exhibit A, right?
Exhibit A.
Okay, thanks.
And that's page, well, it's not. Exhibit A. This new ordinance, we're proposing, well, let's first deal with the waterway. Why did we move it from 50 to 100? And have we contacted DHEC to see what they recommend?
And that's page 3, which one?
3, that would be item 4, B4.
Seemed like DHEC, did they not require 75 feet
It's 75-foot buffer from,
building? And we went due to the fact there's oil, gasoline, and battery acid or whatever is all in these junk cars, we went the extra 25 foot to ensure that it's a little bit safer in there.
So the 50 foot from waterway was non-conforming?
so we have lots of things that don't match state regulations or HOAs or any other bodies. We just have our own, and that's what we're reviewing against. And then if the state requires something different when they go to get their impads, then it would move.
All right, so 100 feet it is. What's the average size of these junkyards?
There's no specific size. What is the, we looked up the Shiloh, one on Shiloh Road, it was what?
About 25 acres.
Yeah, it's right at, we used to have one on Coffee Road that was 13 acres. So it just depends on, as they are where now, how many cars they can get in there and how much land they use for the
Well,
most part.
This is not only cars, this is also for
Well, I mean, but
scrap metal
what I'm just saying,
recycling, things like that.
this is scrap yards and all
Yeah.
now. This ordinance covers all of them. But that was, the ones that's just the junk, actual junk, the cars I could consider a junkyard, they're averaging about 20,
That's on the bigger side, that one that we were looking at.
What's the smallest one?
I'm not sure of that one.
I know there's one that's, coming up. It's the one a lot of people complain about, so, it's like 3 or 4 acres, I think. The one coming from, coming up 133 to Seneca, and then you take a left on Old Clemson Highway there.
Oh, that, the
Yeah,
recycling
salvage,
place?
yeah.
Yeah, that one.
I think it's like 3 acres.
Yeah,
3
but
or
they're,
4 acres.
I heard rumor they're closing.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit less than that.
It's not very big.
It's not big, but it goes.
I mean, they vary, Mickey.
Yeah.
We really don't, one of the issues of this whole thing is we don't really know what all the junkyards are because we don't regulate them. So we don't know who's a junkyard, who's not.
I'm glad you brought that up. There is one thing that I did not see on here. Are we requiring them to be insured?
We don't.
The state does, if I'm not mistaken.
The state does?
The
Okay.
state, they've got a few rules, and if I'm not mistaken, they require an insurance and all kinds of different things.
And I'm sorry that I'm having y'all repeat
No,
everything.
No, that's
I
all
wasn't
right.
here, so I'm trying to get
That
my
was the
head
reason
grasped
it
around it.
was,
All good stuff.
they wanted to send it back and let you and Mr. Adams.
So moving on down to D, what was the reasoning behind only locating these on major streets?
Try to keep them out of residential areas as much as possible.
But doesn't that push them more into the view of the public versus being on the back 40 of some
Well,
dead-end road?
They still have to be so many feet off the road, unlike some that we've got off of 59 that are right on the edge of the road. This one, old Clemson Highway's right on,
Right.
at times it's in the road.
I just think as land values go up, it looks like these junkyards would want to move more into the undeveloped areas.
Well, see, your scenic highway, like Highway 11, they gotta be 1,000 feet off of it. That's state road.
Right.
That's, and, well, I think that was our.
I think it may have something to do with safety in that you got these smaller roads, you got people hauling, heavy stuff in and out, that kind of thing. So anyway, I think since it's a commercial junkyard, you're thinking keep it commercial, less on minor roads. That's what my thinking is.
Yeah, I
James, could you define major and minor road for me?
Yeah, it's based on the daily traffic counts. So, I'm trying to remember how ours is. I mean, I can look it up real quick. I think it's 480 is the difference between.
480 cars?
Trips a day, average daily trips.
So the width of the road, nothing of that plays into major and minor roads.
It does, yeah.
It does.
So the standards change with the classification. So the classification sets all of that.
So you're fixing to educate us.
I'll show it to you.
Are you sure the width of the road changes?
Hang on, let's get to it. I'll pull this over to y'all's screens real quick. So, a minor local road with a 20-foot pavement width with a 4-foot shoulder. A major local road would be a 22-foot driving surface with a 6-foot shoulder. And then you get into collector and arterial roads, which.
So it's very minor,
Yes.
the difference.
It's a couple feet.
Yeah.
I guess a couple feet is a difference.
Do we really want to limit them from being able to go off into a more secluded area, is my question.
I don't know that this would limit them from going into,
It would.
It does.
can't see.
I think when we were going through this, major road and minor road were something that Pickens County had in their setup. And I think it was more of a lack of objection to it than calls for it, with the exception that we were trying to keep people in more commercial corridors as opposed to back in the back somewhere. Whether that's a benefit or a problem, I think we could argue both ways.
I'd like to make a motion that we remove that verbiage from what was that, item?
6D.
It's page 3, number D. Is that the only area where we have the words major local and minor local?
No, it's not. It's also in section 32-754, which is page 3 of 5, regulation of commercial junkyards. Talks about commercial junkyards shall be located only on major local streets. Locating a commercial junkyard on a minor local street is prohibited. So there, it's there, so that would have to go. Item Delta,
Where else is it? Did you find it somewhere else?
not so far, I'm still looking.
You know, James, if it's somewhere else in here?
I was trying to remember, and I don't wanna trust myself to say no, but I don't remember being anywhere else.
Should be able to do a word search.
Yep. Yeah, I've got it on, I have to get those separate. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Just a matter of order, we do need a second on this if we're gonna discuss it any further. We
Now,
had a
let me
motion.
understand the motion. You want to strike the definitions of major local street and minor local street?
That is
and
correct.
You also want to strike item Delta in sections 32-754, which says, commercial junkyards shall be located only on major local streets. Locating a commercial junkyard on a minor local street is prohibited. It looks like that's all the places that it's mentioned. I was looking in Exhibit A, and it's not described over there.
Dave, are you giving us a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
So what we have is a motion of combined of what you two gentlemen just said. Is that correct?
We have a motion to remove Yes. It is.
Well, just for clarity, I think it'd be best for the record that someone make the motion and say what it is. David, I think you said the whole thing just now.
All right.
Would you be offended if he made that motion? Okay. I'm just trying to be, legal with this,
Yeah,
if
gotcha.
you want to call it that, but, somebody
Point
needs
of
to
order.
second your motion.
Point of order.
I'll second Dave's motion.
So,
Okay, the motion is to strike major and minor definitions out of the ordinance, and also to strike item D, 6D, or is it?
It's
D.
32-754
Okay,
D.
well, it's actually would be
You're right, section 6.
7.
No, it is, it's D.
32-754, item D.
Yeah.
To strike that out of the ordinance as well.
That's right.
So you want the junkyards to be located anywhere they want to be in the county?
I think it's gonna drive them into more secluded areas, which will help hopefully resolve some of these issues.
So again, this was an appendage of the old Pickens County, or the Pickens County ordinance we kept. And so, I don't have a good grasp, honestly, on why Pickens County wanted to force junkyards to be in more commercial areas or on more public roads.
Well,
But I'm with you, Mickey. I don't think,
should we postpone this and have somebody reach out to Pickens County?
no.
It doesn't work out well, huh?
No, 3.5 years on this ordinance. All right, so we have a motion and a second to remove those two items from the ordinance. Any further discussion?
3 items,
Well,
2 definitions and item.
3 items, 2 definitions and 1
Yes, sir.
Requirement.
requirement. Any other discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? It is a tied vote, therefore it stays in.
It doesn't pass.
It
The
doesn't.
motion doesn't pass.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
Yes, on the existing non-conforming. That's page 4 or 5, section 32-755.
Okay,
Number 3, operations are altered such as excessive light, noise, dust, and other negative impacts on neighbors used and arise from altered operations. This is left up to too large of interpretation, and it will allow anyone at any time bring about a complaint. Because there's no baseline, we have nothing to work off of. I think the only reason that we should pull somebody's permit, grandfather clause, is if they actually are non-compliance with anything else within this regulation.
well, this says if operations change,
Mhm.
altered, if all of a sudden they start dynamiting the cars, making a lot of noise, then
Okay, but where's your baseline?
I think the baseline is probably business as it was before the change.
But it's
So,
not-
but if you take it out of, I don't think you can read it independently or take it out of context. I think it's under the guise of, there's been an abandonment for 12 months, things are different, there's a change in ownership. I think it's all kind of
Right, but it's,
going hand in hand.
so you're saying all these conditions?
Yeah. That's how I'm reading it.
No,
This is written as any.
right, so, I'm sorry.
one,
You're correct, unless one of these, so
It's only
you're
one.
right in that
If they-
it's any one of these
Oh, any one of those,
is off. Now, the question that you're to elaborate is that, was it dusty before?
Right.
Or is it more dusty now? Or is it the opinion of the new owner that moved in next door
Exactly.
that it's more now, but it really wasn't? And we don't have any way to measure that. We do have a way to measure if they weren't operational for 12 months, potentially. We do have a way to measure if they've expanded it by X percent,
Here.
potentially.
or if they're
I make a motion that we remove Alpha 3 from the list.
second. Any further discussion?
Hold on just a moment, let me read it again.
Unless we can come up with something in there that states the business was this, now you've changed it to this, you're no longer exempt. I mean, with it, I'm agreeing, there's gotta be a baseline there somewhere. We can't just, I can't
Excessive is not
say-
a baseline. Excessive is left up to the complaining neighbor.
right, and that could be me, and I live 30 miles away from this junkyard, but yet I'm hearing something happen now. That's not right.
Call for the question, Chairman.
That's existing units. This is implementing the existing unit. Okay.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Strike that.
Chairman,
Sir,
I'd like to make a motion to amend Section 32755 Alpha 2 to expand by 25%. We need a number.
I think we were sort of leaving that up to council, but we can put it in there. But I think that was the original intent, was it not? To leave that up to council to put in percentage.
It was, but you,
But we
It's
can
like
do
giving
it.
them a number and then they can debate
They
it.
can change it.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion about that?
So 25%, I had put in a number of 10%, but from an expansion standpoint. Most of them are what, 5 acres in size?
probably for that.
10% would be a half-acre expansion, which is twice the size of the parking lot out there. On 5 acres, to me, I felt like that was a pretty big expansion. So 20% to me, I'd put 10, you put 25. I think there does need to be a number in there.
So you don't like the 25?
So on 5 acres, what is that, an acre and 3/4? I mean, that's the back parking lot.
Pretty good size.
That's a pretty good size expansion.
May I ask a question, point of information? How are we gonna know?
Well, they have to come up and,
We've got a site plan.
Okay, so they do have a site plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the intent of the existing is, first off, we didn't want to penalize the existing people to begin with. I think the council kind of was, and the public was saying, well, but there's some existing that are frustrating, and there's some existing that are out there that are already challenged. So if we're gonna say existing, we're not gonna bother you, but we are gonna make some, in other words, we wanted to grandfather them in initially, and I think if we are gonna grandfather them in, great. But I think if they start growing, then there is,
You're being much more restrictive at 10% than you are 25%.
I think that, well, okay.
I would like to make a motion to amend the 25 to 15.
I think 15 is not a good number.
Is that hard number to 15? I don't know. I'm not.
No different than 25%. That's just, it'd be less than 25, but more than 10. So that's meeting in the middle there. And, I mean, you can.
Could I suggest that we just go ahead and vote on this motion, and then if it doesn't pass, then we can look for another number?
There'll be a
Instead of amending the
discussion.
motion.
All those in favor? All opposed?
Motion fails.
Motion fails.
So does anybody have another motion to make?
20% is 1/5.
I like the idea of 15%. If they increase their lot by that much, that's still a good size area for 5 acres or 20 acre one. 15% is still a good size. So I'd make a motion that we put 15% in there.
I'll second that motion.
All right, any
So
other-
I do have more questions. So when we're talking about expanding, we don't have in here, what if the expansion involves moving into a separate tax number? In other words, they move the expansion across the street or they grow it by acquiring more property. Does that open a whole new, wait a second, you're building a junkyard on a whole new piece of property here, or is it an expansion of the existing junkyard?
It would be a new junkyard on a separate piece of
Okay, so
property.
if it was a new tax ID number,
Yes.
then it's a whole new property.
Especially if they're not contiguous.
They would have to follow all the rules at that
So,
point.
so if any expansion into beyond the current tax identification number that they reside on or of that property resides on, then it would trigger a whole new junkyard requirement.
If they're not contiguous, yes. There's no way around that, because it's gonna be.
I mean,
But if they're contiguous, if it's a contiguous tax ID and you acquire that extra property,
If you combine those TMS numbers, you would still have only one TMS number. So if you buy the adjacent parcel, you combine the two parcels, you have one TMS number.
Only if you combine the two.
Yes.
but would it, so it would not trigger an expansion process then?
So that would be part of whatever that allowance would be.
Okay. See, I would be fine with the 25 if they acquire a new TMS number and expand into that new TMS number. I'm fine with 25. But if they can combine that TMS number and they're now one parcel that's grown from 5 acres to 10 acres, I like the 15%.
The only downside I see to this is if you're restricting growth that's too small on them, they will start stacking higher. They will go vertical. So then you're creating unsafe conditions.
That was in the ordinance too, but, that was the reasoning we wanted council to decide this.
Yeah.
Because we never could come up with a decent percentage. So we have a motion, second, on the floor to do 15. All those in favor? Opposed?
Passes 4-2.
42, it passes. It's still up to council to change it or leave it as it is or reduce it, whatever they want to do with it when they get the ordinance. Anything else, sir?
No.
Okay,
Good job.
I would like to make a motion to send this back to the law enforcement.
No, to
Yeah,
council.
one question for you.
Sir.
With the change to number 3, part of that intent was the alteration of the existing activities. So is this basically eliminates that they could, start shredding metal on site or do some other substantial recycling activities. Do you want to consider that? And that's up to y'all. That the operations that they are currently conducting would be the operations that would remain in their grandfathered status.
How do we identify that?
So that would be part of whatever their site plan is, so we do oil filter recycling in this area, we do whatever in this area, or we just have general stuff, so you would not be allowed to expand the scope of operations with that altered.
Do we have site plans on all the current junkyards?
We don't have any regulations on junkyards currently.
I do know there's a recycling place
I just wanna
going,
make sure you consider it, and I'm not advocating.
No, I think
for
it's
either
important.
position.
I do think you're right. It's important, but I don't think we have, like Mickey was saying, a way to determine what were they doing before versus what are they doing now that somebody's now complaining about? And are they complaining about it because it's new, or are they complaining about it because they're the new owner?
And I'm also not offering you a solution either. So.
Come on.
Does DHEC have that information?
I don't know, honestly,
doubt it.
if they have the complete scope of work and what operations are performed on each site or not. So it should be something that's identified in their stormwater permit based on the activities on how detailed their stormwater management plan is for pollution prevention. But, I don't know how often they check up on it either.
The reality is if it's in an existing junkyard and a neighbor who is gonna be the neighbor that's gonna complain even if they move in and buy next to the junkyard, they knew it was a junkyard. I think that that's ultimately, so I don't know that it needs to be in there.
okay. Motion to send this back to the Law Enforcement and Safety Committee.
I'd rather send it to council.
Well,
why send it to
we gotta
council?
send it back to the people that sent it to us,
Is that right, James? Can't just go right to council?
Typically,
the way it
get
should work.
requests, it goes straight to council, and if they won't take it, it will go to law enforcement.
Yeah,
Then they can bump it to law enforcement?
no, well, it'll go to them anyways. They send it back to us, so we have to send it back to them, then they send it on to council at that point.
But when's the next time they meet, law enforcement meets? They're like
Typically,
every
it's
other month?
quarterly, so they met in May. It'd be like August.
Well, I've heard they're gonna meet before that.
Okay.
I've just heard that they're gonna call an earlier meeting, in August. It may be in June, toward the end of June or sometime in July, I heard rumor, but still.
We are required to send it back to
We're
them.
required, according to what I was told, we're required to send it back to those that sent it to us. Because we send it to them, they send it back to us, we gotta send it back to them, and then they can send it on to council.
That seems reasonable.
It goes back to committee. It'll go back.
I like that.
So my motion is to send it back with the
Second.
changes that we've made.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
One more question here. We didn't put anything in B. We didn't add anything as far as the trigger.
We just removed it.
B, we didn't do anything on the 1, 2, 3 as far as triggering mechanisms.
Well, that was one of the reasons that we wanted to send it back to the subcommittee, because we think their expertise could help us in that area.
So do we want to send it to them with asking them to give their opinion on those 1, 2, 3 trigger statements?
Yes, and James, also, I would like for you to highlight the changes that we did make, and then ask them,
Because it's the enforcement that they're going to have to do. So we were asking them to fill in those trigger statements.
so that's part of the motion, I guess. Still second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Opposed? Okay. All right, with that, let's move to the discussion of the discussion regarding the development of an ordinance to foster the identification and safe repair or removal of structures that have become unsafe for occupation, for living in as a result of a fire damage or natural disaster. Mr. Root has a draft ordinance. I hope everyone had a chance to read over it. I need a motion to, I think, send it back to them?
Yeah, so we go back to the committee.
If everyone's has read over it and agrees, I guess the motion would be to send it back to the Law Enforcement and Safety Committee.
As far as agree, I do have questions on it.
Well, that would be coming in discussion.
Okay.
All right? So, have a motion to send it back as is with our blessings, I guess.
And what if the motion fails? Does it not go back to them?
It would technically, if we, let's see, if we voted,
It will still go back to them either way, so if you choose not to recommend going forward with it, they'll go back without a recommendation from.
Gotcha.
so how do we do this, best way to do this, James? Do we,
You can open the floor for general discussion, you can make a motion, and a second, you can
point.
discuss specifics, you can.
all right, let's just do it that way. Let's open the floor for general discussion on this ordinance, and then we'll make a motion to what we're gonna do with it. So the floor is open for discussion.
I do have a couple questions.
Go.
So this came about without coming from us originally, so somebody has suggested there's a need. Do we know where this came from and why?
Okay, this ordinance, for the most part, is already in the National Code of Ordinances, or what is it?
So this is lifted directly from state code laws, and then is also duplicated in part by the IPMC, the International Property Maintenance Code, which is part of the International Code Council that the county adopted and the state adopted.
So the obvious question then is, if we have state ordinances and laws that already have this information, why does the county need it repeated in their ordinances?
This is something that Mr. Davis and Mr. Mize at the meeting talked
Is it
about.
a Utica-driven thing?
I think it's a county-driven thing, because we do have several uninhabitable places that's just sitting there, and druggies and whatever, just staying in them, doing their drugs, and they are a fire hazard, and the people don't want to tear them down. Because whether they got the money to tear them down, or don't have the means to tear them down, or whatever reason, they're not doing anything with them, and so they're just there. And we've had several, at least from some of the meetings I've been to, been several complaints saying these are eyesores. These are, we call it, ugly.
So a couple of things in reading this for me. One, it talks about human habitation. But a commercial building can burn, and a commercial building can be just as dangerous, or an eyesore, or whatever it might be. But this is, so are we saying when human habitation, if it's a commercial building, it's not applicable? But if it's somebody's barn, or it says barn, outbuilding, actually it doesn't say barn, it says outbuilding, which is also not a dwelling, why do we not include commercial in here? Is one question.
Well, the enforceability is the other question. So if we have state laws on the books that have the same wording as this ordinance. Why can we not enforce using state laws? Why do we have to have a county ordinance?
Is it the same wording?
It is, Mr. Rich told me it's about 98% the same words.
Yeah.
You can look at like number 7, I think, had literally lifted from if a county, right?
Yeah.
So, directly from the state. I think the only portion that potentially helps codify it, so the county has adopted the state law almost verbatim, as it is. We're in favor of it, we've adopted it, we agree with it, we are following it.
How is the state law enforced?
The state law, so the state law gives the county the reinforcement threat, so it doesn't contradict the state law.
The reason I ask is because this all talks about the public officer meaning there's one individual who is going to make that grounds for determination. And then I go to number 6.
It doesn't have to be a single, so a public officer can be officers.
So a police officer?
It
Or
could be a code enforcement officer, it could be any, so I think the way it's defined in here is as appointed by the county administrator, as, number 3 appointment.
so it sounded like it was an appointed position.
It's mostly the code
No,
officer.
so,
It's
yeah,
mo-
code enforcement officers is appointed.
Okay.
It's mainly the code enforcement.
So then I went to number 6 and I was trying to go through the timeline here. And am I wrong? The timeline, it looks like that 10 days after a disaster, if somebody makes the complaint, then they can start coming in to make rulings on this. And I'm thinking, okay, well, when does insurance adjuster come out? How quick can this stuff be handled? Because
Well, I mean, look at Seneca, when the tornado came through. How many people would this affect if this was in place in Seneca?
Exactly right.
it just seems like the timeline here is insane. It says 60 days that they're gonna come plow down your building and charge you for it.
Right.
And I'm going, wait a second, insurance adjustment's gotta come out. My family house has just burned. I can't get to the safe to get money because apparently there's a tape that gets put up on the door that says you can't cross here. I can't get to money. I'm trying to find rent. I'm trying to find clothes for the kids. I'm trying to get them back in school. I'm trying to do all these things. And we're saying that we're gonna come tear your building down in 60 days and charge you for it?
Right.
To me, this is scary the way it's written.
It is, and one of the things that I'd like to see is there needs to be a defining definition between primary residence and secondary. Because the last thing, like you said, we want to see is for a family to go through such a tragedy, and then the government body, instead of helping, come in and create more stress. I mean, I couldn't imagine, there's only a few things worse than losing your home. And I could not imagine standing there after I lost my home and have a county officer come up to me and tell me, you're gonna have to come up with these funds to take care of this. Because this really is gonna affect two types of people here in this county. It's gonna affect those uninsured, and the uninsured are generally the ones that's making it from paycheck to paycheck. The ones that are already struggling. And it's gonna affect the slumlords, who is just gonna allow houses to sit there, and they're gonna take the insurance money and move on to something that's gonna get them a quicker return or a quicker cash flow. So I think the verbiage needs to separate those two.
James, is this not things that we should be discussing with the attorney, because he's the one who wrote this ordinance here? And he won't be available until maybe our meeting in July.
I can't tell you his.
Well, I know I talked to him this morning, he's not gonna be, he won't be available for our next meeting,
Okay.
because he's having, some medical things done. Can we table this till the July meeting,
You can postpone it till.
or postpone it till the July meeting, and get with the attorney? have these, that way everybody can read it a little more, have the questions, and ask him the questions. He can give the answers. I mean, the council can wait. I mean, we don't have to send this right back to them immediately, even though they would want it. We already got the state law and
So
it says basically the same
state
thing.
law is basically enabling, so it is allows the county or the local jurisdiction to come up with their own ordinances and then it would back it up. So it's not,
It's not an ordinance in itself. But still, we all have questions with this one, and we need to have the attorney present for those questions.
you can also propose your own timeline if that's something you're interested in doing. If you wanna replace it, you're welcome to do that.
Does the state say fire damage or natural disaster? Because I thought when I saw the video that the original intent of this was just fire, period. It
But-
seems like disasters got added on. If we just take off, can we remove natural disaster?
That was this was done during the council meeting, correct? And if I'm not mistaken, one of the councilmen he was the one that added the, natural disaster. And we should
No,
wait.
but the original councilman didn't have that on there, right?
While you're on that, I've got a question. Why is it that it doesn't include neglect of the property? You know, because if you've got an unsafe situation, it doesn't really matter if it was by fire or natural disaster or neglect. You know, it still needs to be approached as far as some way of communicating with the person that they need to do something about the property.
I will say it again, we need to have these questions for the attorney. He can give us the answers that we're looking for. If he can't, he knows where to find them. He's the one who wrote this ordinance, so I feel that we should postpone this until our July meeting to see if the attorney can be here at our meeting. We only have one meeting in July.
Got a motion?
That is my motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Unanimous?
Thank you, guys. All right, we have one other item on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor?